I also remember collecting caterpillars from a hedge once.
Really?
Yes, and I picked up all these caterpillars from this hedgerow. And then I came out in a big, big rash, and my mum and dad had to take me to hospital. And they told me I was allergic to caterpillars. I mean, I just used to go wandering off. I would tell my parents where I was going to, and then I just used to go off and collect things and look for things, and that's all I used to do as a kid.
My earliest childhood memory that I remember about being with wildlife would be digging the pond at home with my dad, and then when the frogs appeared, sitting outside and playing with the frogs, really. So I used to go outside, we'd feed the fish, and all the frogs would come out. And I used to lie next to the pond, the frogs would come, I used to stroke them because I quite liked that they were quite smooth. And then my brothers unfortunately nicknamed me Frog Girl, and that stuck for a really long time.
I remember we'd built a den in the garden, me and my mates, and this adder intruded, and we went into the den, and this adder was curled up because it was nice and warm. It was just a wooden basic building with straw, hay. And clearly this adder thought, oh, that's nice, it's nice and warm in there, I'll go in there. And it was curled up on a ground sheet we had in there to sit on. And most of the kids ran away, but me and my mate, who probably was, looking back, was far more adventurous than I, he actually picked it up so that we could look at it, which was a silly thing to do. He'd had no training whatsoever, but he'd seen someone do it, so he did it. But we looked at it and we studied it, and I always had a tremendous respect for it, and not for that particular one, but for adders in general. And we released it, and I've no doubt he lived happily ever after, but that wasn't the same with a lot of adders.
Before I got sent away to that small prison of a boarding school, my parents' house backs onto fields, and there used to be, and unfortunately that is the past tense, an amazing thick hedge and ditch running across in between these two big fields. And that used to be where I went and ran wild. An absolutely fantastic introduction. And the animal which actually was most closely associated with my times there was the fox. There was frequently a fox out there, and I'd be hiding in the ditch, and hiding behind hedges, and I never quite remember what I was hiding from, but there had to be a lot of hiding involved. And but once, really clearly remember this moment of feeling somebody looking at me, and I was just, well, okay, so I've been caught, and turning around slowly and finding a fox really quite close, just staring at me, probably going, what the hell is that boy doing there? Yeah, if he's hiding, it's not very good. And if he's hiding, what's he hiding from? But it was a really key moment, because I have just this memory of being seen and being noticed by a beautiful wild animal.
Because I've always been interested in wildlife. And in that diary I've noted things down like the first swallow that arrives and even the last swallow that departs. And I can see, when I take a look through my diaries, I can see that the swallows now are arriving 10 days before they used to do 40 years ago, and they are actually leaving 3.5 weeks earlier than they used to. So they're arriving earlier because of global warming, and they are leaving earlier because there's lack of flies.
I spent quite a lot of time at low tide foraging on the rocks and so on. There was a nice rocky outcrop just at the edge of Prestwick Beach, and at low tide you could go into the rock pools and find sea anemones and really some quite large crabs. My dad really liked catching some of these and eating them, so we used to catch food. And we also had a canoe that we used to fish from the bay, and so we saw a lot of wildlife that we caught, like mackerel and flatfish and so on.
My favourite wildlife experience was going to the butterfly farm when I was younger, because all the butterflies just fly around and land on you, and it's nice.
My favourite wildlife experience was holding a newt in my school pond.
My favourite wildlife experience was the first squirrel of the year, because it was jumping between all the trees.
I enjoyed pond dipping with Froglife because I saw all the different smooth newts, and I got to hold them and touch them and see what they were like in real life.
I volunteered for Froglife for 7 years, and I enjoy doing it because it stops me being bored. And I've held a slow worm, frogs, toads and smooth newts, and I've seen grass snakes, slow worms, smooth newts, great crested newts, toads, frogs and lizards.